So this is our third lesson for the Quilting with the IQ Designer. And this lesson I'm calling the traditional way of quilting because you're going to do it, you're going to quilt it after your quilt is put together. So we've done the embroidery designs, you've pieced them together, you've added your borders and all. And we've made the little quilt sandwich. We have the backing, the batting, and your quilt piece. When you're doing this, you want to cut your backing and your batting a little bit bigger than your actual quilt top, because you can kind of see when you hoop, you have to have enough fabric, on the edges to allow for your hoop and everything. So what we're going to do first, I'm going to do one block on the stellaires and the altaires, all the ones that have the app that you use your phone to take the picture, and then I'll do the other block on the Solaris that uses the built-in camera on the machine to get the designs positioned and everything. So I've gone ahead and I've hooped up my first block that I'm going to quilting. And what you need to do first is you need to measure your block that you're going to be doing the quilting within. And be sure and measure. Don't just go off of what the block should be, because the way I piece, there's no telling what those blocks are going to end up being. And so measure your block. So I measured this one, and it is 4 by 4. Okay, so this one that has the your sweetest pie is a 4 by 4 block. Now, we also need to get our design ready, okay? This is a little confusing. You've already stitched the design, but what we need to do is we need to get a border around that design, because we're just going to be stitching within that 4 by 4 and outside around that embroidery design. So what you're going to do first is you're going to go into the embroidery part of your machine. You're going to pull the designs up off of your USB stick. So we're going to go into the Quilting with Designer, and we're going to get the sweetest pie words and set them. Okay, now we've got to create a border, or let the machine create the border around this. So you're going to go into your edit screen, and you have this little flower down here. You're going to touch that, and then you can see how it's putting this black border around each of the words. Now, I like to give myself a little buffer, so you have this distance that you can play with over here, and see how when I start adding the distance, see how that little black border it starts growing away from the words. And so that gives you a little bit of wiggle room, basically, when you're needing to position the design and everything. So I'm going to increase that up just a little bit. Maybe not that much, but a little bit. I'm looking to see how this kind of has each word separated that way. So we'll go for that. Now you're going to save that in the memory, but this is a different memory. So when you push memory, it's going to tell you, okay, this is saving it in the IQ Designer, and it's going to be under the shapes icon. Okay, so we're going to say okay, and so we're done with that part. Now we're going to go back to home, and we're going to go into the designer part of the machine. And first of all, I'm going to get my block. I'm going to create my block, my square. So I'm going to go into the shapes. I'm going to choose my square, and I'm going to size it to my size. So my block was 4 inches. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to take it down to maybe 3.85, something like that. Just a little bit smaller, because you want it to come inside the border just a little bit. You don't want it to be exactly 4 inches. So 3.85. We're going to go with that. Say okay. Now, so that's my parameter for my block. Now I need to bring in that outline of that embroidery design. So again, remember it saved it in the shapes. So we're going to go back into shapes, and see how up here across the top of your screen you have that same little flower. So you're going to touch that, and there's my words. So I'm going to bring that up, And see, it's not the embroidery design, it's just the shape of the words. And now I need to apply the quilting in between there. So we're working with the fill, remember? So we're going to go around the paintbrush, go into that piece of paper, and you're going to choose your quilt design. I'm going to use just that one with the leaves since we're kind of doing a fall theme on these. And doesn't matter what color. And then remember, you got to push the bucket next to the paintbrush and then touch in between your outside border and your words and see how it applies the quilting around those embroidery designs. Now I'm going to show you what happens because I'm purposely skipping a step here. I'm going to push next and I'm going to hit preview and see how we got that black satin stitch because we didn't apply that no-sew. So we need to go back, hit return. Now we're working with that outline. That black satin stitch was the outline. So remember, that's around your pencil. So the piece of paper next to your pencil, you're going to choose that no-sew, say OK, touch the bucket next to the pencil, and then touch that outline. You don't have to do it for the words. It was just around the block. Then next, I can hit preview again, go look at it, and see now I don't have that black outline. But I do have a straight stitch, remember, and I don't want that. So remember, we want to turn that outline off. And then I can also kind of play with the size. I'm going to take the size of this pattern down just a little bit just because my block is kind of small. Now I'm going to do this same quilt design on my pie block, the block with the piece of pie, and so I'm going to remember I want it the same size, so I'm going to remember I'm taking it down to 70%. Hopefully I'll remember that. Okay, now I can go look at it again, and we got it. Okay, now I need to set that. This is where it converts it into the embroidery design. I'm going to go ahead and go into embroidery, okay, and come back down here. I've hooped up my quilt. I like using the templates because I want to make sure you want to try to hoop as straight as you can. You don't want your block in your hoop cockeyed. And even though this is a 4x4 square, I'm using the 5x7 hoop because I want wiggle room. I want to be able to move that design around if I need to, because you may not hoop exactly dead center. So you want that wiggle room around your block. And be sure when you do hoop also, remember that your hoops, the inside hoop and the outside hoop, have those arrows. You want to line up those arrows and then just use your template. The Solarises don't come with templates, but we can order you a set of templates if you would like, because I like using the templates. I use those a lot. So I hooped it up, tried to get it as straight as I could. Now I need to, on the machines with the app, I'm going to take a picture of my block here so that I can position that quilt design around the design on my quilt. So you're going to go into your app and we're going to use the one that's for positioning. Okay, so I'm going to choose that one. And then remember, you hold your phone up over it until it counts down 3, 2, 1. Okay. I'm not looking at what I'm doing here. There we go. Okay, stand up. There we go. Okay, and then it says send to the machine. And it sent it. And remember, you have to put your hoop on the machine. So now I can see my quilt design around my words and in my block. And I need to play with it a little bit. I need to play with the positioning. So I'm going to go into layout. I'm going to go into move. I'm going to nudge it over just a little bit. And really, that's pretty good right there. Remember, you have this kind of realistic preview up here in this corner. It's kind of a picture with a hoop with a zigzag on it. You can go into there, and then you can zoom in, and you can see a lot closer of how you have it positioned there. Okay, I think that's good. So I'm going to stitch that off, and then we'll come back and we'll do it same thing on the Solaris. Okay, so I got that one quilted. You can kind of see it. I hooped around it. And now I'm ready to do the piece of pie. Okay, and I've hooped it sideways. Okay, so I'm still using the 5x7 hoop because I think there's still going to be enough wiggle room and all, but I have hooped it sideways, so we're going to have to rotate our design when we bring it up to get the border around it. But now I'm on the Solaris machine, and so we're going to go through the same steps. What I'm going to do first is go... Is my arm in the way?
No, you're good.
Okay, I can move it.
You're fine.
It's not what I wanted to do. Okay, we're going to go into embroidery first. And I'm going to go get that design again off of our USB stick. And in the Quilting with Designer. And this time we want the piece of pie. Alright, set that. And I need to rotate it 90 degrees. And just make sure that's how it is in your hoop. So that's right. And then remember, we're going to save it in with that little flower to get the border of it. So we're going to hit the little flower. I'm going to increase the distance just a little bit. And then save that in the memory again. And again, it's telling me, sorry, there's all kinds of background noise. You're going to recall it from the IQ Designer in the stamp pattern. So you say, okay. And then we're going to go back to home. Say, okay. Go into the designer. And, okay. Oh, I did measure my square, or my block. My block was 4 by 5.5. I'm pretty sure. Now I forget.
5.5 by 4.
5.5 by 4, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what I said a while ago?
Yeah.
4, 5.5. Okay. Just double checking. It's easier to measure your block before you hoop it. You'll be a little bit more accurate also. Okay, so we've got to get our block first. So we're going to go into our shapes, get our square, say okay. We're going to size it. We're going to go to 4 inches wide because I have it hooped sideways. And a little bit smaller. So remember, I made it just a little bit smaller. So I'll go down to 3.85. And then 5.5. To make it a little bit smaller, we'll go down to 5.35. And this is just kind of guessing measurements here. Okay, so we're making it just a little bit smaller than what our block actually is. Then we say okay. Then we need to bring in our piece of pie. So again, that's underneath the shapes, underneath the little flower. There's the last piece of pie. That one was a different one. So there's this one. And there's my pie. Then I need to apply the quilting in between the two. So remember, we're in the paintbrush. Go to your piece of paper. I'm going to go get that same leaf design and hit the bucket next to the paintbrush. Now I don't want that outline around my square, so I'm going to go to the piece of paper by your pencil, do the no-sew, hit the bucket next to the pencil, and then touch your line. And remember, you can touch it again, and if you get the double knock, that means it's taken it. Push next. I can see the preview already. Now it does have a little red border around it, and that kind of is confusing because it does show, remember it has the on the Solaris that have the upgraded out, it does do the outline off. That red line just means that that's, you know, it's selected. Okay, that's not the actual border around it. And I did play with the size. Remember, I took it down to 70% on the other one, so I'm going to take this one down, and it'll generate the change, and then I can see what it's going to look like. So we're good with that. I'm going to push set and OK. And now it's an embroidery design. I'm going to go ahead and send it to the embroidery screen. And then what I'm going to do is just scan it to get the picture of my quilt up here. So the little camera that's right above layout, you're going to hit that. You're going to push scan, say OK, and it's going to scan your hoop. Okay, and then it shows me there on my screen, so then I can see if I need to play with it a little bit, and I can see, okay, yeah, I probably need to move it down just a little bit. The quilt design, remember you're working with the quilt design because the piece of pie has already been embroidered. And bring it down that way just a little bit. And then remember you have the realistic preview. You can go look at it, zoom in. I think that's good. Yeah, I think that's good. I'm just looking at it all the way around. And so I'm ready to stitch that off. And then we'll be done. Once you stitch that, if you were doing a whole quilt, you would just do this on every block, and then you'd be done with your quilting, and you just have to bind it. So that's all. Okay, and it's done. So we quilted both blocks on the machine around our embroidery design. So now all we have to do is trim it down and bind it. Bailey said I knew.